This morning, I am going to reflect on two pillars of Christianity: love and forgiveness. For me, love and forgiveness are the two most important teachings shared by Jesus. Remember how Jesus responded when the Pharisees asked him, "Which of the 10 commandments is the greatest?" Jesus replied by saying, "The greatest commandment is this, to love God." Then he added, "We must also love one another and ourselves." Love God, love others, and love ourselves. When Jesus was near death, after being tortured and hung on the cross, his final act was to ask God to forgive those who were harming him. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing." This final act by Jesus punctuates the importance of forgiveness. In today's Old Testament lesson from Genesis, we heard a wonderful story illustrating how love goes hand in hand with forgiveness. We heard the story of Joseph meeting his brothers in Egypt. But to understand it, we must know the rest of the story about Joseph and his relationship with his brothers. Joseph was the 11th son of the 12 sons of Jacob. Now, Joseph was a dreamer. And in his dreams, he saw himself as the leader and all his brothers and his father bowing down before him. Jesus shared these dreams with his brothers. This made them become angry, and they soon conspired to kill Joseph. So one day, as Joseph approached his brothers in a field, they threw Joseph into a pit. But then the brothers saw a caravan of Ishmaelites on their way to Egypt, and they changed their minds and decided to sell Joseph to the merchants. So they pulled Joseph out of the pit and handed him over to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. When the Ishmaelites arrived in Egypt, they sold Joseph to Potiphar, an officer of the Pharaoh and captain of his guard. Joseph soon found favor in the eyes of Potiphar, and eventually Potiphar made Joseph the overseer of his household and all he had. All was going well for Joseph, until Potiphar's wife became angry with him. She told Potiphar a lie, which resulted in Potiphar throwing Joseph into an Egyptian prison. It happened to be the place where the Pharaoh's prisoners were confined. But even while in prison, Joseph prospered. He became known as an interpreter of dreams. He soon found favor with the chief jailer, and the jailer assigned him to oversee the other prisoners. Now Pharaoh was having disturbing dreams, and he needed someone to interpret them for him. One of his servants, who had been recently released from prison and knew Joseph, told the Pharaoh about Joseph's ability to interpret dreams. Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dreams, telling Pharaoh his lands would experience 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. So Pharaoh removed Joseph from prison and placed him in charge of securing surplus food items during the 7 years of plenty. Pharaoh then made Joseph responsible for selling the surplus food items during the time of famine. When the 7 years of famine began, it spread throughout all the land. And soon all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain. Famine was devastating the lands, including Canaan, where Joseph's father Jacob and all of Joseph's brothers lived. And they were in dire need. But Jacob learned there was grain available for purchase in Egypt. So he sent his sons to Egypt to buy food, so that they may live and not die. Joseph's brothers went to Egypt to buy grain. When they arrived, guess who they met? Yes, it was Joseph. Joseph, though the brothers did not recognize him, but Joseph recognized his brothers. Now, Joseph had every right to be angry. This was his opportunity to administer the revenge his brothers so deserved. Joseph could deny them the food they sought and allow them to starve. He could even throw them into prison. And who would blame Joseph? This is where the Old Testament story we heard this morning began. When Joseph saw that his brothers had returned, he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." When he was alone with his brothers, he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph told his brothers to come closer. And then he let them know he was Joseph, their brother, the one they had sold to the Ishmaelites. Understandably, the brothers became quite distressed. But Joseph said to them, "Do not be distressed or even angry with yourselves, for God sent me before you to preserve life, to prepare for this famine." Then Joseph told his brothers to go, to bring back his father and all their families. He told them to settle in the land of Goshen, where they would be near him. Joseph said, "Bring your children, your children's children, all your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there." Then he kissed each of his brothers and wept upon them. Instead of seeking revenge, Joseph forgave his brothers unconditionally. Instead of being filled with anger at the actions of his brothers, he loved them. His love for them was so strong, he wept. What an incredible story of forgiveness and love. It clearly shows how the two mesh together so closely, forgiveness and love. Is it truly possible to do one without the other? Now, I would like each of you to close your eyes and think of a time you forgave someone who had wronged you. How did you feel? Let me tell you a secret. When you forgive someone, be it a friend, a family member, yourself, or God, all that anger and that hatred and those wasted emotions are washed away. Forgiving creates the space needed for love.
Amen.